The HR director slid a manila folder across the table containing 200 printed email complaints about me. 200. From clients I'd never met, about projects I'd never touched. My career was about to end over fabricated evidence until I noticed something in the email headers that made my blood run cold. The person destroying my life was sitting 3 feet away from me, 5 days a week, for 18 months. I started at Morrison and Burke Financial Consulting as a junior analyst right out of my MBA program. It wasn't glamorous, long hours, demanding clients, partners who expected perfection, but I loved it. Within 2 years, I'd been promoted twice and was on track to become the youngest senior consultant in the firm's history. That's when Vanessa Chen transferred to our branch from the Chicago office. Vanessa was hired as a senior consultant, the exact position I was gunning for. She was polished, articulate, and had an impressive client roster. Our desks were adjacent in the open plan office, separated only by a low partition. Everyone assumed we'd become fast friends. 2 ambitious women in a male-dominated firm, supporting each other, rising together. For the first few weeks, that's exactly what it seemed like. "Maya, your presentation yesterday was incredible," Vanessa said during our 3rd week sharing office space. "The partners were practically drooling. You're going to crush that senior consultant promotion." I thanked her, genuinely flattered. She seemed supportive, generous with praise, always asking about my projects with what appeared to be genuine interest. But small things started happening. Weird things. Client files would disappear from my desk overnight. I'd find them in the break room or stuffed behind the copy machine. My calendar invites for important meetings would get mysteriously declined without my knowledge. I'd show up to conference rooms to find the meeting had been rescheduled and no one had told me. "You need to be more organized," David told me after I missed the 3rd client call in a month. "This isn't like you, Maya." I started documenting everything. Screenshots of my calendar, photos of files on my desk before I left each night. I felt paranoid, but something was deeply wrong. Then the complaints started. The first one came 6 months after Vanessa arrived. David called me into his office, his expression troubled. "We received an email from a potential client. They said you were extremely rude during a consultation call last Tuesday." I stared at him. "David, I didn't have any consultation calls last Tuesday. I was at the Henderson site visit all day." He frowned, checking his notes. "It says here you called them about switching their investment portfolio and became aggressive when they expressed concerns." "I've never heard of this client. What's their name?" "Patterson Holdings." I've never heard of Patterson Holdings in my life. David seemed to believe me that time. But over the following months, similar complaints trickled in. Then they became a flood. Clients claiming I'd cold-called them with pushy tactics. Former clients saying I'd sent inappropriate follow-up emails. Prospective clients reporting that I showed up to meetings unprepared and dismissive. The emails were detailed. They mentioned specific dates, specific conversations, specific failures. And I had alibis for almost none of them. They were scheduled for times when I was working alone, or commuting, or at lunch. "Maya, this is becoming a serious pattern," David said during our one-on-one, 8 months in. "I've defended you because your actual work is excellent, but upper management is concerned." I started losing sleep. I'd lie awake running through every interaction, every conversation, trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. Was I somehow offending people without realizing it? Was there something fundamentally broken about my communication style? Meanwhile, Vanessa was thriving. She'd landed 3 major accounts in her first year. The partners adored her. She was already being mentioned as a candidate for the director track, the position that had been my goal since day 1. And she was so supportive through my struggles. "Don't worry, Maya," she'd say, patting my shoulder as I stressed over another complaint email. "Everyone has rough patches. I'm sure it'll blow over." At the 15-month mark, I was called into HR. The HR director, a stern woman named Patricia Morrison, yes, one of the founding family, sat across from me with that manila folder. She opened it, and I saw page after page of printed emails, complaint after complaint after complaint. Maya, we've received over 200 client complaints about you in the past year and a half. My mouth went dry. 200? That's impossible. I have them all documented here. We've been compiling them for months. At this point, we have no choice but to initiate termination proceedings. 200 complaints? My hands were shaking. This couldn't be happening. I'd worked so hard, sacrificed so much, and my career was ending over what? Phantom clients I'd never spoken to? "Can I see them?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Patricia hesitated, then slid the folder across the table. I started reading through them, and my confusion deepened with each page. Client names I didn't recognize, projects I'd never worked on, dates when I was out of the office entirely. None of this made sense. Then I reached a complaint from a company called Brightwater Investments. The email header caught my eye. Sender, concerned client 2847@mailnow.com. That was strange. Most legitimate client complaints came from company email addresses. This looked like a burner account. I flipped to another complaint, another mailnow.com address, and another. My heart started pounding as a terrible suspicion formed in my mind. "Patricia, can I have 24 hours before we finalize anything? I think there's been a serious misunderstanding, and I need to investigate." She studied me for a long moment. "You have until end of business tomorrow, but Maya, this doesn't look good." I walked back to my desk in a daze. Vanessa looked up from her computer with that practiced, sympathetic expression. "Hey, everything okay? You look pale." "Fine," I managed. "Just a stressful meeting. Let me know if you need to talk," she said sweetly. "I'm always here for you." I smiled and nodded, but inside, my mind was racing. Okay, I need to pause here because this is the moment my entire life was about to change. 200 fake complaints, a burner email address, and a coworker who was just a little too sympathetic. If you're already seeing where this is going, hit subscribe because you're going to want to see how this ends. And drop a comment. Have you ever had that gut feeling that someone close to you was sabotaging you? Because what I discovered next still makes me sick to my stomach. That night, I stayed at the office until everyone else had left. I told security I was working late on a deadline, not unusual for our firm. Once I was alone, I started digging. First, I pulled the metadata from the complaint emails Patricia had printed. Every single burner email had been created within a 2-month window, right after Vanessa transferred to our office. The IP addresses showed they'd all been sent from the same general location, our city. But that wasn't enough. I needed concrete proof. I thought about Vanessa's computer. Our IT policy allowed any employee to access shared drives, but personal files were protected. However, I remembered something from my onboarding 2 years ago. The default password for new employees was their employee ID plus their birthday in MMDD format. Most people changed it immediately. Most people. I walked to Vanessa's desk, my heart hammering. Her employee ID was on the nameplate. Her birthday was on the team calendar. She'd made a big deal about her celebration last month. I typed in the password. It worked. I know this was probably illegal. I know I was violating company policy, but my entire career was about to be destroyed by fabricated evidence, and I was desperate. Vanessa's computer opened to her desktop, and at first, I found nothing unusual. Client files, spreadsheets, presentation templates. But then I noticed a folder labeled Personal Tax Documents. Something told me to click it. Inside was another folder, Backup. Inside that, Project Maya. My stomach dropped. The folder contained 217 email drafts. Each one was a complaint about me. The drafts were dated, organized by week, and included notes about which burner email account to send each one from. There was a spreadsheet tracking which fake client names she'd used, which dates she'd chosen, which specific complaints she'd fabricated. She'd researched real companies to make the complaints seem legitimate. She'd studied my calendar to pick times when I had no witnesses. 18 months of systematic sabotage, all meticulously documented. I took photos of everything with my phone, then I copied the entire folder to a USB drive. The next morning, I walked into Patricia's office and placed my evidence on her desk. I need you to look at something before we discuss my termination. For the next hour, Patricia reviewed the files in stunned silence. Her expression shifted from skepticism to disbelief to barely contained fury. "Where did you get these?" she finally asked. "From Vanessa's computer, work computer. I know I violated policy by accessing it, and I'll accept whatever consequences come from that. But I need you to understand, I didn't do any of this. She's been systematically framing me for a year and a half." Patricia picked up her phone. "Janet, please ask David Chen to come to my office immediately and contact building security." 20 minutes later, Vanessa was escorted into the HR office. She walked in with her usual confident smile, probably expecting to witness my final humiliation. That smile vanished when she saw the spreadsheet projected on the wall. "What is this?" she asked, but her voice had lost its steadiness. "That's what we'd like to know," Patricia said coldly. "These files were found on your work computer. Would you like to explain why you have a folder called Project Maya containing 200 fabricated client complaints?" Vanessa's face went white, then red. Then she made her fatal mistake. Instead of denying everything, she tried to justify it. "You don't understand. That promotion was supposed to be mine. I transferred here specifically because they promised me the director track. Then I arrive and everyone's talking about Maya, precious Maya, the rising star. I've been in this industry for 8 years, and some MBA princess was about to leapfrog over me?" The room was silent. I worked too hard to watch someone with half my experience get everything handed to her. Someone had to level the playing field. Patricia's expression was ice. "You created 200 fake client complaints? You fabricated evidence? You nearly destroyed someone's career based on pure jealousy." "She didn't deserve that position," Vanessa shouted. David, who'd been standing in the corner, finally spoke. "Vanessa, Maya earned every opportunity through her performance. The only thing you've earned today is immediate termination and a potential lawsuit." Security escorted Vanessa out of the building within the hour. I watched from my desk as she was marched through the office, clutching a cardboard box of her belongings. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at anyone. The aftermath was extensive. The firm launched a full investigation into how the fake complaints had been processed without verification. New protocols were implemented requiring client complaint confirmation. Patricia personally apologized to me for not catching the pattern sooner. 3 months later, I received my promotion to senior consultant. 6 months after that, Vanessa's former employer in Chicago reached out to Patricia. Apparently, they were conducting their own investigation. It turned out I wasn't her first target. She'd done the same thing to a colleague in Chicago, though less elaborately, and that woman had actually been fired. They were exploring legal action. I gave a statement. I sent copies of everything I'd found. To this day, I don't know what happened to Vanessa after she was blacklisted from the industry. Part of me hopes she got help. Part of me hopes she faced real consequences for destroying people's lives. But mostly, I'm just grateful I noticed those email headers. If I hadn't caught that detail, if I just accepted my termination and walked away, I would have lost everything. My career, my reputation, my belief in myself. Now, every time I mentor junior analysts, I tell them the same thing. Document everything. Trust your instincts, and if something feels wrong, it probably is. Because sometimes the person sabotaging you is sitting 3 feet away, smiling and asking if you need to talk. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, please give this video a like and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next workplace nightmare. And if you've ever experienced professional sabotage, a toxic coworker, or a situation where you had to fight for your own reputation, I want to hear from you. Drop your story in the comments or send it to us for a chance to be featured in an upcoming video. You're not alone, and your story deserves to be told. Until next time.